Today, we'll give you a review for the midterm examination this Friday. And this is the coverage of the exam. You will note that we had 4 topics for the midterms period: sampling methodology, and that will be total points will be 20%, and then variable description, operational definition is also 20%. You will note that we had 2 sessions for the research design 1 and 2, and so that will constitute 40%, and then the data classification is also 20% for a total of 100%. For the sampling methodology, we just review my slides on sampling. If you read a lot of the definition and what are the different sampling methodology, you'll be able to understand the different sampling methodology. And the questions that I will be giving you in the exam come from the slides that I sent you. But I will just give you some tips to reviewing sampling methodology so you'll be able to get correct answers. Okay, sampling methodology, the simple random sampling is the simplest of all probability sampling design. So examples for your simple random sampling will be when you make use of scientific calculators, when you make use of table of random numbers, when you make use of Excel, using the random number in Excel, you're using actually simple random sampling. With systematic sampling, you use a sampling interval K, where we calculate for the sampling interval K, and we told you that K, that's the sampling interval, has the formula of the population size divided by the sample size, and then you get the sampling interval. And then we just round that off, and then that will be your sampling interval. So if there is a sampling interval, and then we're actually using systematic sampling. And then stratified random sampling is used when there is heterogeneity in the population of interest. So we stratify the population into homogeneous groups because the population is heterogeneous. So if we stratify the population, we group them into homogeneous groups. And when we do that, we use a stratified random sampling. And then we use multi-stage random sampling in a nationwide survey, and when the population is homogeneous. Now, let's talk of operational definition. In the operational definition, you need to understand that you only define the variables that you see from the objectives of the study. And a variable, as we have discussed to you, is something that changes from person to person. And that's the reason why it is called a variable. It changes from person to person. It also changes from time to time, from place to place. Now, you don't define a term if it is not a variable. Participants, for example, in a study is not variable, so you don't define it. And when you define a variable, the definition should be operational. And the definition is operational if, aside from giving the meaning of the variable being defined, the unit of measurement is given if for quantitative data, if data are quantitative. Now, you also give the classification or the category of that variable if that variable is qualitative. So for qualitative data, So you categorize or you classify that variable. Now, for data classification, I won't give you a review on research design because I already have given you a review on research design. So just go back to the review that I gave you on research design. And so the last will be data classification and presentation. And we told you that data can either be quantitative or qualitative. And data can also be classified according to scale of measurement, the nominal, the ordinal, the interval, the ratio. Just go back to my lecture to understand the definition of these scales of measurement. And data can also be classified, quantitative data that is, can also be classified as discrete or continuous. Discrete data are those that are countable. We count them. Continuous data are those that we measure, so they are measurable. And because for discrete data, for discrete data, because because they are countable, we can only report discrete data in integers or whole numbers. And for continuous data, because we measure them, they are measurable, we can report them in decimals or fractions. Now, qualitative data is presented in a table using a simple frequency distribution table. So if data are qualitative, you present them using simple frequency distribution table. But if data are quantitative, you present them using a grouped frequency distribution table. A grouped frequency distribution table is a table, quantitative data, you group them into some meaningful groupings or categories. So for example, BMI is quantitative, and then you can group it into a grouped frequency distribution table. You say, for example, below 18.5, so that's undernourished, and then 18.5 to 22.9, that's well, not that's normal, and then from 23 to 24.9, that's pre-obese, and so on and so forth. So you group them into some meaningful categories. So when you group quantitative data, groupings have to be meaningful. And quantitative data can also be presented using their mean and the standard deviation. Mean and standard deviation. And lastly, for when you present qualitative data in a graph, you use a pie graph or a component bar. So you use a pie graph or a component bar interchangeably if categories are few. If you have few categories, for example, if you are talking of sex, you only have two categories, males and females, and then you use a pie or a component bar. So you can use either a pie or a component bar. But if there are many categories, and then you use a bar rather than a pie or a component bar. So a bar graph is used for qualitative data if categories are many. Now, quantitative data are presented using the histogram if data are continuous, and we can also use the bar if data are discrete. So a bar graph is something that we have spaces between bars. Histogram, we don't have spaces between bars, and we use histograms for continuous data. And to depict trends, say for example, number of COVID cases every day, and then you use a line graph. And to show relationship between two quantitative variables, you use a scatter plot. So hope hopefully class should be able to get good high grades in my examination. So good luck and keep yourselves free.